Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Brittany from She Run the World Travel Vlog, and I've been living and traveling abroad for over 7 years now. So I have made plenty of travel mistakes over the years. Sometimes they're not a big deal, but sometimes they can really impact your entire trip or even change the way that you view a certain place. So let me help you avoid these 10 common travel mistakes. The last one is something that I'm actually still struggling with. Number 1, planning too much or not enough. If you don't do any research before you arrive somewhere, you might actually leave without seeing some of the main sites or trying some of the main foods that there are to try. You'd leave and then check Instagram, see this awesome photo and think, oh my god, where is that? Oh, I was literally just there, I just didn't know that this existed. And honestly, that can really negatively affect your trip or even the way that you remember it. Meanwhile, I'm the complete opposite. I am a planner. I like to plan every single detail as much as possible. What are the local customs? What are the traditional foods? What are top things that I must see and do? Honestly, sometimes it's great because I'll arrive to a place and think, oh, I know that building, or oh, that food looks really familiar. It just makes me feel like I really know the city already and I really can make the most of my time there. But when I first started traveling, I used to plan to a fault. I would literally research everything and plan a day-by-day itinerary, and if something, kind of messed up the plan or didn't go according to the plan, I'd get a little upset. Anyone who's traveled before knows that very little usually goes according to plan, so you really have to learn how to roll with the punches. So luckily, I was quickly able to find that really sweet spot balance. I did do a lot of research and planning because that's just who I am, but I also learned to keep things very fluid. Don't plan every single day because getting lost and finding hidden gems are the best part of traveling. It's really all about that balance. Don't plan too much, but don't plan too little. Number 2, how you access your money. Highly recommend getting a Charles Schwab debit card because they're the only debit card that will reimburse you for 100% of ATM fees abroad. If you don't want to do this or you aren't able to do this, check with your local bank provider and see what are their international fees if you are to pull out money from an ATM. If they don't have any fees, then it's actually really easy to do some research and find out which banks or ATMs in whatever city you're going to don't charge them either. You can just Google which banks in city have no foreign ATM fees, and typically you'll find a thread or a blog or something to help you out. So if you can find that, that's awesome. Your home bank doesn't charge a fee and that international bank doesn't charge a fee, so you'll get out your money for $0. That's the perfect scenario. But if you aren't able to do that perfect scenario, hopefully you can at least just get one fee, maybe just from your home bank or just from the international bank and not both fees. Before I got my Charles Schwab debit card, I had 2 banks, Wells Fargo and Credit Union. I never ever use my Wells Fargo card to get money out abroad because it's always a minimum of $5 just from Wells Fargo. And my credit union never had any fees for withdrawing from ATMs internationally, so I was always able to do that quick research to find that ATM that wouldn't have a fee either, so I could avoid ATM fees altogether. Number 3 is overpacking, and oh my god, can I speak to this one. So the first time that I had really traveled internationally and been on my own was when I studied abroad in Barcelona in 2016. And I was only gone for 6 months and I brought 2 huge suitcases, plus a carry-on suitcase, plus a backpack. It was absurd. I barely wore half the stuff that I brought, and it made traveling after my study abroad program ended very difficult. During that time though, I really discovered the minimalist lifestyle and how much you really don't need. Ever since then, I've really only traveled with a carry-on. Usually it's just my backpack, and I've really gotten good at living that minimalist lifestyle. Not only does traveling with a carry-on save you money on airline baggage fees, but it also saves you time, so that way you don't have to go to the check-in counter before your flight, and after your flight you don't have to wait around at the luggage carousel. It's also just so much more convenient when you're traveling. You can just bop around, hop on a train, hop on a bus, hop on a flight. You don't have to think twice about anything because everything's just on your back. Even staying in hostels is a lot easier because you'll just have your backpack next to your bed instead of trying to wheel in this big suitcase and take up too much room when it's a shared room for everybody. When you're gone for longer periods of time with just your backpack, I highly recommend bringing lots of neutral clothing or basic clothing items that match with a lot of things. That way you can mix and match and create a lot of different outfits. Combine this with laundry service while you're on the road and you'll feel like you have way more stuff than you actually do. Number 4, converting local prices back to the dollar. So when you first arrive to a place, yes, of course, you need to do this because you need to get a general understanding of how much things cost. That way you can put together a pretty accurate budget and stick to it. But once you've been in a place for a while, you start to kind of get a feel for how much certain things should cost in certain areas. So once you're accustomed to those local prices, you need to stick to the local prices and stop converting it back to USD. When I was living in Vietnam, this was one of the biggest travel mistakes that my friends would make. They'd see a fancy brunch place and say, wow, it's only 10 USD. This would be $25 back home, when a local Vietnamese breakfast costs $1. Or, oh my god, this spa has massages for only 30 bucks. This would be 80 bucks back home, when a local Vietnamese massage is 5 to 10 bucks. So in your head, it sounds like a great deal because you're converting it back to USD and then comparing it to prices back home. But in reality, you're in Vietnam. If you live according to the local Vietnamese prices, you should be saving a ton of money. This applies even if you're not living there and you're just traveling. If you want to save money in a place that's cheaper than your home country, live like the locals do. Number 5, not eating like the locals. So this kind of piggybacks off the point that I was just talking about. To save the most money and get the most local experience, you want to eat like the locals do. This means go to the local markets, try that advertised lunch special that you see, stop at a street vendor. This is how the locals would normally eat for the prices that they would normally pay. It may be enticing to go to some super fancy restaurant where the filet mignon is only 20, 30 bucks and back home would be 60. But when the local meals average from $1 to $3, you'll quickly realize how much you could be saving and how much more authentic it's truly gonna be. You're not gonna be able to get that back home. So of course you can splurge every now and again, but making it a habit is a huge travel mistake. Number 6, check for an airport curfew. One of the best travel hacks is to sleep in an airport. If you have a long overnight layover or a super early flight, you don't have to pay for accommodations at night, just head to the airport and sleep there. But make sure to check online before you plan that and make sure that the airport is open 24/7 and they don't have an airport curfew. This was a huge travel mistake that I made on my solo trip from Myanmar to China. At the time, I had honestly never even heard of an airport curfew. I just assumed all airports stayed open 24/7. So when I was flying from Myanmar back to Chongqing, China, where I was living at the time, I had a layover in a small town in China called Ming. I arrived at 11 p.m. and my flight back to Chongqing was at 5 a.m. So I was thinking, there's no point in taking a taxi there, getting a hotel, coming back. Too much money, too much time, too much effort. I'll just sleep in the airport for a few hours, not a big deal. Except that it was. I had literally just fallen asleep on a bench inside the airport when someone tapped me and put their phone in my face. And when I looked at the phone, it was translated to English and it says, "You need to leave, the airport is closed." I was super confused and I couldn't speak Chinese, so I ended up spending the night on the sidewalk right outside the airport. I'm normally not one to freak out very easily or get scared, but that night I was super freaked out and didn't really sleep at all because I was just on edge, sitting on a sidewalk waiting for my flight. And it all could have been avoided if I just knew to check for an airport curfew. Number 7, learning when to trust the locals. This one's really hard for me because I feel torn. I'd say about 95% of the time the local people are there to help you. They're super excited that you're there. They want to share their home country with you. They want you to have a good time. They have so much pride, and those local interactions are really what truly make a trip. But the other 5% of the people are trying to scam you, pickpocket you, or take advantage of you. And the more you travel, you'll kind of develop this sixth sense if someone really is trying to help you in a foreign country, or if you should quickly remove yourself from that situation. Like I said earlier in this video, my first international travel experience in a time where I was actually on my own traveling was when I moved to study abroad in Barcelona, Spain. Only 3 weeks after moving there, my friend and I decided we wanted to do our first weekend trip and we chose Marrakesh, Morocco. We were both fairly new travelers and hadn't really developed that sixth sense yet. So to make a long story short, we really wanted to get to this market so we can have a local meal when we first arrived. We didn't know how to get there, so we popped into a local random shop, asked him if he knew where the market was or if he can point us in the direction of it, and he said, "Yeah, totally, I'm actually heading there in a few minutes if you just want to follow me." Red flag number 1, right? When you're hearing this story, you're thinking, how could you be so dumb? Like, obviously you shouldn't follow this stranger. But at the time, we didn't really think anything of it because he was walking way ahead of us. He wasn't talking to us. He wasn't hanging out with us. It was just us, following him very far behind and trying to get to that market. Until he turned left into this gated archway and we just blindly followed him and the gates shut behind us. So that's when we snapped into survival mode and realized something's wrong. We were locked in a tannery, which is actually where they skin animals for their hides, so all around us are buckets of blood, dead animal parts, knives. It was kind of like a real life horror film. But anyways, he stood in front of the gate, blocking it so we couldn't get out, and he was asking us for a few $100 US each in order for him to let us out. So naturally we started to freak out because we didn't have that much money on us, nor did we have access to that much money even if we went to an ATM. You're probably thinking, how did we get out of this situation? And honestly, we were so lucky. There were little slits in the gate, so if you were walking by, you could peek in and see. And there was an Irish guy who walked by and I guess peeked in, didn't know what it was, kind of saw the situation, realized that we looked very uncomfortable. He kind of pushed open the gate, came up to us, put his arms around us like, "Oh my gosh, I've been waiting for you guys. We're supposed to meet for lunch down at the market. Let's go." Gave the guy a few dollars, said, "I'm so sorry for your troubles," and just walked out with his arms around us. And honestly, I truly don't know what would have happened in that situation if it weren't for him. So if you're out there right now watching, I think about you a lot and thank you. I've gotten scammed and cheated a few other times when I was traveling, but obviously that was by far the worst situation I've ever been put in. And it was all because I just decided to trust a local. I thought he was genuinely gonna help me get to the market. and I shouldn't have. So just try to use your best judgment when locals are offering to help you. Hopefully you can get a sixth sense kind of feel if they're being genuine or if they're trying to rip you off. Number 8, not looking up country entry requirements. For US pass holders, this is a big one because typically for the most part, we're really lucky. We have a great passport where we don't really need visas or special documents or health papers to get into most countries. So when I went to New Zealand, I didn't even realize that Americans needed an e-visa to enter. In a normal situation, this is a super easy fix. Go online, apply for the e-visa. You'll usually get it in a few hours or at most a few days. But I was already at the airport. I was trying to check in, and that's why they wouldn't let me check in, because I didn't have that visa and my flight was leaving in 3 hours. So obviously I applied right then and there. I sat there, I waited 2.5 hours. My flight is literally about to leave. They're about to close the gates, and I still have nothing in my email. Luckily, I went back up to the counter and he called someone. I'm not sure who he called or what was said, but he let me board the flight, and when I landed in New Zealand, I had the email with my e-visa. Always make sure to check what the entry requirements are for your specific passport, whether it's a visa, certain health requirements, or even pandemic-related things that are going on right now. Number 9, eating at the airport. So I hope we all know by now that eating at the airport is a huge ripoff. Everything is ridiculously overpriced, so try to eat at home or in the city center before you get to the airport. Even in some of the cheapest places in the world that I've been, where local meals are $1, $2, $3, you'll go to the airport and they're $20. I don't know how any local person could afford that. It's crazy. So don't make that travel mistake. Don't eat at the airport. Try to save yourself some money. And number 10, comparing things. So like I said in the beginning of the video, this is something that I still struggle with, but it is a huge travel mistake. The more you travel, the easier it is to do though. You'll naturally start to compare the places that you're at with places that you've previously been. You might go to an amazing waterfall, but then your brain automatically starts thinking, well, Kwang Sai waterfall in Laos is way better. Or you're walking into this stunning cathedral or church and your brain automatically goes, but doesn't even compare to La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. You have to consciously make the decision to try to train your brain to not automatically do that, because you can totally ruin your time somewhere if you're constantly comparing the food, the sights, and the activities. Enjoy the place for what it is, because it's totally unique in its own way. So there you have it. Hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and avoid these 10 travel mistakes. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button so I know to make more videos like this one. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos, more travel tips, hacks, and itineraries. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.